Welcome to a journey through the origins of the Swiss Confederation. This is the story of how a small alliance in the heart of the Alps evolved into the independent and unified nation we know today. Our story begins in the rugged alpine regions of Central Europe, where towering peaks and strategic mountain passes would shape the destiny of a confederation unlike any other in medieval history. Over the course of nearly 4 centuries, we will witness the transformation from a simple mutual defense pact in 1291 through decisive military victories like Morgarten in 1315 to formal recognition as an independent nation in 1648. Throughout this series, we'll examine medieval manuscripts and primary source documents, analyze historical maps showing territorial changes, and explore the decisive battles that secured Swiss independence. This is more than just history. It's the compelling narrative of how a unique confederation emerged from the medieval world. Get ready to dive deep into this fascinating historical narrative. Our journey begins in the complex political landscape of 13th century Central Europe, where the seeds of Swiss independence were first planted. The 13th century marked a pivotal period in Central European history. The territory that would become Switzerland existed within a complex web of feudal relationships, fragmented territories, and competing powers. The Holy Roman Empire dominated Central Europe, but its control was far from absolute. This vast political entity was composed of hundreds of duchies, counties, bishoprics, and free cities, each with varying degrees of autonomy. This political fragmentation created a landscape where local rulers constantly negotiated their relationships with the emperor, neighboring territories, and their own subjects. Power was distributed across multiple levels of authority. To understand this complex political landscape, we must examine the feudal system that governed medieval Europe. This hierarchical structure defined relationships between rulers and subjects through land ownership and personal loyalty. The feudal pyramid illustrates how power flowed from the king at the top, through barons and knights, down to the peasants at the base. Each level owed service and loyalty to the level above, while providing protection and land to those below. Within this feudal framework, the alpine regions that would become Switzerland occupied a unique position. These remote mountain communities controlled vital trade routes, but remained largely beyond direct imperial control. As the 13th century progressed, local communities in these alpine valleys began to assert greater independence. They formed their own governing structures and sought to minimize outside interference in their affairs. Several factors contributed to this drive for autonomy. Geographic isolation provided natural protection, while control of trade routes brought wealth and strategic importance. The weakness of imperial administration in these remote areas created opportunities for local self-governance. 3 alpine communities, Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden, would emerge as the leaders of this independence movement. These forest cantons, as they became known, shared common interests in maintaining their traditional freedoms and resisting external control. This complex political landscape of 13th century Central Europe, with its fragmented authority, feudal relationships, and emerging local autonomy movements, created the perfect conditions for the birth of what would become the Swiss Confederation. In the early 13th century, the Hohenstaufen dynasty ruled the Holy Roman Empire. These powerful emperors would make a decision that would fundamentally change the political landscape of the Central Alps. The Hohenstaufen emperors, seeking to strengthen their control over strategic alpine passes, granted certain communities a special status called Reichsfrei. This German term literally means free of the realm, or imperial immediacy. To understand the significance of Reichsfrei status, we must first examine the typical feudal hierarchy. In most of the Holy Roman Empire, power flowed from the emperor down through dukes, counts, and local lords before reaching common communities. However, Reichsfrei status completely bypassed this complex feudal chain. Communities granted this privilege answered directly to the emperor himself, eliminating all intermediate lords and their demands for taxes, military service, and obedience. The Central Alps region was strategically crucial for the Hohenstaufen emperors. The Gotthard Pass and surrounding valleys controlled vital trade routes between northern and southern Europe. By granting Reichsfrei status to communities like Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden, the emperors secured loyal allies in this critical region. This grant of Reichsfrei status was revolutionary for its time. These alpine communities gained the right to govern themselves, collect their own taxes, administer justice, and make local laws. They were free from the arbitrary demands of feudal lords who had previously exploited them. The significance of Reichsfrei status cannot be overstated. It represented a fundamental shift from feudal dependency to self-determination. These communities learned to govern themselves, make collective decisions, and defend their interests. This experience in self-governance would prove essential when they later formed the Swiss Confederation. The Reichsfrei status granted by the Hohenstaufen emperors was thus a crucial foundation stone of Swiss independence. It gave the Central Alpine communities their first taste of self-governance and freedom from feudal oppression. This autonomy would prove indispensable when external threats later forced these communities to band together for mutual protection and defense. By the late 13th century, the Austrian House of Habsburg had emerged as one of the most powerful feudal dynasties in Central Europe. Their ambitions extended far beyond their traditional territories, and they cast covetous eyes upon the strategic Alpine passes that controlled trade between northern and southern Europe. The crown jewel of Habsburg ambitions was control over the Gotthard Pass, a crucial mountain route that connected the German territories with the wealthy Italian city-states. Whoever controlled this pass controlled the flow of goods, people, and wealth across the Alps. The three forest cantons of Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden found themselves directly in the path of Habsburg expansion. These communities had enjoyed considerable autonomy under the Holy Roman Empire, but the Habsburgs threatened to impose direct feudal control over their territories. The Habsburg threat was not merely theoretical. Austrian forces had already begun asserting control over neighboring territories, installing Habsburg administrators and demanding feudal obligations from previously independent communities. The forest cantons recognized that their traditional freedoms hung in the balance. This recognition of the Habsburg threat became the catalyst for unprecedented cooperation among the forest cantons. What had been separate, independent communities began to see their fates as intertwined. The foundation was being laid for a defensive alliance that would change the course of Swiss history. The year 1291 marks a pivotal moment in European history. In the heart of the Alps, three small communities would forge an alliance that would become the foundation of modern Switzerland. Three Alpine communities came together in this historic alliance. Uri, a valley community controlling key mountain passes, Schwyz, which would eventually give its name to all of Switzerland, and Unterwalden, representing the forest cantons of the region. The Federal Charter of 1291, known in German as the Bundesbrief, stands as the oldest constitutional document of Switzerland. This parchment, sealed with 3 wax seals, contains the written agreement that bound these communities together in mutual defense. The charter established key principles that would define Swiss governance for centuries. It was a mutual defense agreement, a commitment to self-governance, and the foundation upon which the Swiss Confederation would grow. The alliance was built on the principle of mutual defense. If one community was attacked, the others would come to its aid. This created a network of protection that was stronger than any single canton could achieve alone. The charter established fundamental principles that would guide the Confederation. These included mutual military assistance, peaceful resolution of internal disputes, rejection of foreign judges, and the preservation of local customs and laws. This alliance of 1291 became the cornerstone of what would grow into the Swiss Confederation. The principles of mutual defense, self-governance, and local autonomy, established in this Founding Pact, continue to define Switzerland to this day. The Federal Charter of 1291, known in German as the Bundesbrief, stands as one of Europe's most significant constitutional documents. More than mere parchment and ink, this charter represents the foundational principles that would shape Swiss governance for centuries to come. Written in Latin on parchment, the charter bears the distinctive wax seals of Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden. These seals were not mere decoration, but legal guarantees of each canton's commitment to the alliance they were forging. The Charter establishes three fundamental principles that would define the Swiss Confederation. First, mutual defense against external threats. Second, the maintenance of internal peace and justice. Third, the protection of trade routes through their territories. The Charter's language reveals the practical motivations behind this alliance. The three cantons controlled crucial Alpine passes, particularly the Gotthard route, which connected northern and southern Europe. Control of these trade routes meant economic prosperity and strategic importance. Beyond its practical provisions, the Federal Charter established a revolutionary concept for its time: self-governance through mutual agreement rather than submission to a feudal lord. This principle of consensual government would become a cornerstone of Swiss political culture. The historical context of the Charter reveals the urgent motivations behind its creation. The Habsburg dynasty was expanding its influence throughout the region, threatening the autonomy that these mountain communities had enjoyed under the Holy Roman Empire's distant rule. The Federal Charter thus represents both a practical alliance and a symbolic declaration of independence. It established precedents for Swiss governance that would endure for centuries: collective decision-making, mutual support, and the principle that legitimate authority comes from the consent of the governed rather than divine right or conquest. By the late 13th century, the three forest cantons of Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden found themselves facing mounting external pressures. Their hard-won autonomy was under constant threat from powerful feudal lords seeking to expand their territories. The greatest threat came from the House of Habsburg, a powerful Austrian dynasty that controlled vast territories throughout Central Europe. The Habsburgs coveted the strategic Alpine passes that these cantons controlled, particularly the vital Gotthard Pass. Faced with this existential threat, the three cantons realized that their individual autonomy could only be preserved through collective action. They needed to stand together or risk falling separately to Habsburg expansion. This alliance was far more than a simple mutual defense pact. It represented a revolutionary declaration of independence from feudal overlords and a commitment to self-governance that would echo through the centuries. The Eternal Alliance became a symbol of resistance against external domination. These mountain communities chose to forge their own destiny rather than submit to the expanding power of the Habsburg dynasty and other feudal lords. This foundational alliance established principles that would define Swiss identity for centuries to come: collective security, local autonomy, and fierce independence from external control. The three forest cantons had chosen freedom over submission. Following the founding alliance of 1291, the Swiss Confederation began a strategic expansion that would transform it from a small mountain alliance into a formidable political force in Central Europe. Between 1332 and 1353, 4 new cantons joined the original three-canton alliance, each bringing strategic advantages and strengthening the Confederation's position in the region. Lucerne became the first canton to join the original alliance in 1332. Located on Lake Lucerne, it controlled vital trade routes and brought significant economic resources to the Confederation. Zürich joined in 1351, bringing the Confederation its most important commercial center. The city's wealthy merchant guilds and military expertise significantly strengthened the alliance's economic and defensive capabilities. Zug joined the following year in 1352. Though smaller than other cantons, Zug's strategic position served as a crucial bridge between different regions of the Confederation and provided valuable agricultural resources. In 1353, both Bern and Glarus joined simultaneously, completing this phase of expansion. Bern brought significant territorial holdings and military strength, while Glarus controlled crucial Alpine passes and provided mountain defense expertise. By 1353, the Confederation had grown from 3 mountain cantons to 8 diverse members, each contributing unique strengths. This strategic expansion created a formidable alliance that controlled key trade routes, possessed significant military capabilities, and covered a substantial territory in Central Europe. By the early 14th century, the Swiss Confederation was evolving beyond its rural origins. The inclusion of powerful urban centers would fundamentally transform this mountain alliance into a formidable political and economic force. Urban centers brought unprecedented economic power to the Confederation. These cities were hubs of trade, commerce, and craftsmanship, generating wealth that far exceeded what rural communities could produce. Beyond economics, these urban centers wielded significant political influence. They possessed sophisticated governance systems, diplomatic networks, and military resources that strengthened the entire Confederation. Lucerne was the first major urban center to join the Confederation in 1332. This prosperous city controlled crucial trade routes and brought substantial economic resources to the alliance. Zürich followed in 1351, bringing even greater economic and political weight. As one of the most powerful cities in the region, Zürich's membership significantly enhanced the Confederation's influence and prestige. Bern completed this urban transformation in 1353. Known for its military prowess and territorial expansion, Bern brought both defensive capabilities and aggressive growth potential to the Confederation. The inclusion of these three urban powerhouses fundamentally transformed the Swiss Confederation. What began as a rural mountain alliance had evolved into a diverse and influential political entity, combining the defensive advantages of the Alpine communities with the economic and political resources of major cities. By the late 14th century, the Swiss Confederation had grown from 3 founding cantons to 8 members. However, this expansion brought new challenges that required formal agreements to maintain unity and prevent internal conflicts. The year 1393 marked a crucial turning point in Swiss history with the creation of the Sempacher Brief, the first comprehensive treaty to unite all 8 members of the growing confederation under common rules and principles. This historic agreement established fundamental principles that would govern the Confederation's internal relations. Most importantly, it forbade any canton from declaring war unilaterally without the consent of all other members. To understand the significance of this agreement, we must visualize how it transformed the Confederation from a loose alliance where individual cantons could act independently to a unified body requiring collective consent for major decisions. After the Sempacher Brief of 1393, the Confederation operated under a new model of collective decision-making. No canton could act alone in matters of war and peace, ensuring unity and preventing internal conflicts that could weaken the alliance. The Sempacher Brief represented more than just a military agreement. It established the principle of collective sovereignty that would become a cornerstone of Swiss political culture, ensuring that major decisions affecting the Confederation required consensus rather than unilateral action. This foundational agreement of 1393 transformed the Swiss Confederation from a loose military alliance into a more cohesive political entity. The principles established in the Sempacher Brief would influence Swiss governance for centuries to come, laying the groundwork for the federal democracy that Switzerland is known for today. November 15th, 1315. In the narrow mountain pass near Lake Egeri, a small force of Swiss Confederates prepares to face the mighty Habsburg army. This battle will determine whether the young Swiss alliance survives or falls under Austrian domination. Duke Leopold I of Austria leads a massive army of heavily armored knights and infantry into Swiss territory. The Habsburgs seek to crush the rebellious mountain cantons and secure their control over the vital Alpine passes. The Swiss Confederates, vastly outnumbered, choose their battlefield carefully. They position themselves on the slopes above the narrow pass, using the mountainous terrain to their advantage against the Habsburg cavalry. The battle begins as Habsburg cavalry charges up the narrow mountain path, but the Swiss have prepared a deadly trap. They roll massive logs and boulders down the slopes, crushing the advancing knights and throwing the Austrian formation into chaos. The Swiss victory is complete and devastating. Duke Leopold himself is killed in the battle, along with hundreds of his knights. The Habsburg army retreats in disarray, leaving the Swiss Confederates masters of their mountain homeland. The Battle of Morgarten transforms the Swiss Confederation from a defensive alliance into a formidable military power. This victory proves that disciplined infantry fighting on favorable terrain can defeat the finest heavy cavalry in Europe. The legend of Swiss military prowess is born. On July 9th, 1386, near the shores of Lake Sempach in central Switzerland, a battle would unfold that would forever change the course of Swiss history and mark a decisive turning point in the Confederation's struggle for independence. The battlefield lay in the heart of Swiss territory, near the strategic town of Sempach. This location would witness one of the most significant military encounters between the expanding Austrian Habsburg forces and the determined Swiss Confederates. Leading the Austrian forces was Duke Leopold III of Austria, a member of the powerful Habsburg dynasty. Leopold commanded a formidable army of heavily armored knights and professional soldiers, confident in their military superiority over the Swiss peasant militias. The opposing forces presented a stark contrast. The Austrians fielded a larger, more heavily equipped army of professional soldiers and armored knights. The Swiss, though outnumbered, possessed superior knowledge of the terrain and innovative infantry tactics using long halberds. The battle began with the Austrian heavy cavalry charging the Swiss infantry lines. However, the Swiss had learned from previous encounters and deployed their forces in tight formations, using their long halberds to devastating effect against the mounted knights. The Swiss infantry formations held firm against the initial cavalry assault. Their long halberds, designed specifically to counter mounted knights, proved devastatingly effective. As the Austrian formation began to break under the relentless Swiss pressure, the tide of battle turned decisively. In the midst of the fierce fighting, Duke Leopold III himself was struck down by Swiss halberds. The death of this prominent Habsburg leader sent shockwaves through the Austrian ranks and reverberated across all of Europe, marking a dramatic shift in the balance of power. The Battle of Sempach ended in complete Swiss victory. The Austrian forces were routed, their leader was dead, and the Swiss military reputation was firmly established. This decisive defeat effectively halted Habsburg expansion into Swiss territories. The Battle of Sempach marked a crucial turning point in Swiss history. This victory transformed the loose alliance of cantons into a more unified confederation, established Swiss military prowess throughout Europe, and secured their independence from Habsburg control. The battle's outcome would inspire further Swiss territorial expansion and cement their reputation as formidable warriors. From this moment forward, the Swiss Confederation would no longer be seen as a collection of separate mountain communities, but as a unified force capable of defending their independence against the greatest powers of medieval Europe. The Swiss transformation from feudal dependencies to independence represents one of medieval Europe's most remarkable political evolutions. This was not merely about winning battles, but about fundamentally changing their relationship with external powers. Under the feudal system, the Swiss cantons existed within a rigid hierarchy of dependencies. They owed allegiance and obligations to Habsburg lords, who in turn served the Holy Roman Emperor. This system bound them in chains of vassalage. The Swiss military victories at Morgarten and Sempach were pivotal moments that shattered their feudal bonds. These battles demonstrated that the Swiss could successfully resist their supposed overlords and defend their autonomy through force of arms. This transformation was profound and comprehensive. The Swiss moved from being vassals who owed military service and taxes to external lords to becoming sovereign entities that made their own decisions about alliances, governance, and defense. The Swiss victories established the fundamental principle of self-determination. This was not merely about controlling territory, but about asserting their right to choose their own political destiny, form their own alliances, and govern themselves according to their own traditions and interests. Through their military victories and assertion of self-determination, the Swiss transformed from feudal dependencies into an independent political entity. This transformation laid the foundation for what would become modern Switzerland, establishing principles of sovereignty and self-governance that continue to define the nation today. The old Swiss Confederacy represented a revolutionary political experiment in medieval Europe. Unlike the centralized monarchies that dominated the continent, Switzerland developed as a loose network of alliances between independent rural and urban communes. This confederation map from the late 18th century shows the complex patchwork of territories that made up the Swiss political system. Each colored region represents a different canton or allied territory, connected through a web of mutual agreements and alliances. The Confederation functioned as a network of alliances, rather than a unified state. Rural communes in the mountains maintained their traditional assemblies and local governance, while urban centers like Zürich and Bern operated as independent city-states with their own territories and laws. This decentralized model was revolutionary for its time. While most of Europe was ruled by absolute monarchs with centralized power, the Swiss maintained local autonomy while cooperating on matters of mutual defense and trade. Each commune retained its own laws, customs, and governance structures. Despite this decentralization, the Swiss maintained a strong collective identity. The Founding Fathers and cantonal symbols, as shown in this historical postcard, represent the shared values and mutual commitments that bound these diverse communities together in their pursuit of freedom and independence. This unique political model would prove remarkably durable, surviving for centuries and influencing modern concepts of federalism and democratic governance. The old Swiss Confederacy demonstrated that effective governance could emerge from voluntary cooperation rather than centralized authority. By the late medieval period, the Swiss Confederation found itself navigating an increasingly complex web of relationships with powerful neighbors. The Holy Roman Empire, the House of Habsburg, and the Duchy of Burgundy all posed both opportunities and threats to Swiss autonomy. The Holy Roman Empire, though weakening, still claimed nominal authority over much of Central Europe. The Swiss cantons had originally been granted Reichsfrei status, making them directly subordinate to the emperor rather than local lords. The House of Habsburg posed the most immediate threat to Swiss independence. As Austrian dukes expanded their territorial control, they sought to bring the strategic Alpine passes under direct Habsburg rule, challenging the autonomy the Swiss had fought to preserve. The Duchy of Burgundy represented another major power that the Swiss had to carefully navigate. Burgundian territories stretched across much of what is now eastern France, the Low Countries, and parts of the Holy Roman Empire, creating a complex geopolitical landscape. The Swiss Confederation's territorial development from 1291 to 1797 shows how skillfully they expanded while maintaining their independence. Through careful diplomacy and strategic alliances, they gradually established themselves as a significant regional power. By the 15th and 16th centuries, the Swiss Confederation had successfully established itself as an independent entity, no longer merely a collection of Habsburg subjects or imperial vassals. Their strategic position controlling Alpine trade routes, combined with their military prowess and diplomatic skill, allowed them to maintain autonomy while surrounded by much larger powers. By 1648, Europe had been devastated by 30 years of religious and political warfare. The Holy Roman Empire lay fragmented, and the great powers sought a comprehensive peace settlement that would reshape the continent's political landscape. The Peace of Westphalia consisted of two separate treaties signed in the Westphalian towns of Münster and Osnabrück. These negotiations involved virtually every major European power and would establish principles of sovereignty that would govern international relations for centuries. For the Swiss Confederation, these negotiations represented a crucial opportunity. Although Switzerland had been effectively independent for centuries, it remained technically part of the Holy Roman Empire. The Swiss delegates worked tirelessly to secure formal recognition of their sovereignty. The breakthrough came in Article 6 of the Treaty of Osnabrück. In clear, unambiguous language, the treaty declared that the Swiss Confederation was to be considered completely separate from the Holy Roman Empire, free from all imperial jurisdiction and obligations. This formal recognition transformed Switzerland's international status overnight. No longer could any power claim authority over Swiss territory based on imperial rights. The Confederation had achieved what few entities could: complete sovereignty recognized by all major European powers. The Peace of Westphalia established the principle of state sovereignty that would dominate European politics for centuries. For Switzerland, this meant security, legitimacy, and the foundation for its future policy of neutrality. The Swiss Confederation had finally achieved the formal recognition it had long deserved. The year 1798 marked a dramatic turning point in Swiss history. For over 5 centuries, the Swiss Confederation had maintained its independence through careful alliances and military prowess. But the revolutionary fervor sweeping across Europe would soon reach the heart of the Alps. In January 1798, French revolutionary forces under General Brune crossed into Swiss territory. The French army, battle-hardened from years of European warfare, faced a Swiss confederation that was politically divided and militarily unprepared for modern warfare. The Swiss cantons, accustomed to fighting as independent units, struggled to coordinate an effective defense. Their traditional pike formations and crossbows were no match for French artillery and disciplined infantry tactics. By March 1798, Swiss resistance had collapsed. The French established the Helvetic Republic, completely transforming Switzerland's political structure. The ancient confederation of independent cantons was replaced by a centralized unitary state. The transformation was radical. The old confederation of 13 sovereign cantons, each with centuries of local traditions, was replaced by 22 administrative districts controlled from Paris. Swiss autonomy had effectively ended. The Helvetic Republic faced immediate and severe problems. French taxation drained Swiss resources, while the disruption of traditional trade routes caused economic hardship. The centralized system clashed with centuries of local governance traditions. Popular resistance emerged across Switzerland. Peasant revolts erupted in the central cantons, while underground networks worked to preserve Swiss customs and identity. The very foundations of what it meant to be Swiss were under threat. The Helvetic Republic represented more than political change. It was an existential threat to Swiss identity. 5 centuries of Confederate tradition, local democracy, and cultural autonomy were swept away by revolutionary ideology imposed from abroad. Yet this period of foreign domination would ultimately strengthen Swiss resolve. The experience of losing their independence made the Swiss more determined than ever to preserve their unique Confederate system and democratic traditions. By 1803, the Helvetic Republic had proven to be a catastrophic failure. The centralized French-imposed system had created chaos, economic collapse, and civil unrest throughout Switzerland. Napoleon Bonaparte recognized that a new approach was desperately needed. The Helvetic Republic, imposed by French revolutionary forces in 1798, had attempted to transform Switzerland into a centralized unitary state. This radical departure from centuries of cantonal autonomy had triggered widespread resistance and economic devastation. Napoleon's Act of Mediation, signed on February 19, 1803, represented a masterful compromise. It restored cantonal autonomy while preserving key revolutionary principles. The act created 19 cantons, each with significant self-governing powers, while maintaining a federal structure for common defense and trade. The genius of the Act of Mediation lay in its careful balance between old and new. Traditional cantonal sovereignty was restored, respecting centuries-old customs and local governance. Yet revolutionary principles like civil equality, religious freedom, and economic liberalization were preserved, creating a unique hybrid system. The transformation was dramatic. Where the Helvetic Republic had imposed rigid centralization, the Act of Mediation created a flexible federal system. 19 cantons regained their autonomy, while a federal diet handled matters of common concern like defense and trade relations. The Act of Mediation proved to be a turning point in Swiss history. It ended 5 years of political chaos and restored Swiss confidence in their ability to govern themselves. Most importantly, it created a template for modern Swiss federalism that would influence the definitive constitution of 1848. Napoleon's Act of Mediation demonstrated that Switzerland's strength lay not in rigid centralization, but in the careful balance between unity and diversity. This principle would become the cornerstone of Swiss political identity for centuries to come. The Federal Constitution of 1848 marked a pivotal transformation in Swiss history. establishing a more centralized federal state while carefully preserving the autonomy that cantons had fought to maintain for centuries. Following the turbulent Napoleonic period and Napoleon's act of mediation in 1803, Switzerland found itself in need of a new constitutional framework that could unite the diverse cantons while respecting their traditional autonomy. The Constitutional Convention of 1848 brought together representatives from all cantons, including both liberal reformers who sought greater unity and conservatives who wanted to preserve traditional cantonal rights. The debates centered on finding the right balance between federal authority and local autonomy. The 1848 Constitution established key federal institutions, including a bicameral Federal Assembly, a 7-member Federal Council as the executive, and a federal Supreme Court. It also created a unified currency, postal system, and guaranteed freedom of movement between cantons while centralizing defense and foreign policy. The new federal structure created a clear hierarchy, with the federal government holding authority over national matters, while cantons retained significant autonomy in local affairs. This represented a careful balance between unity and diversity that would become a hallmark of Swiss governance. Importantly, the Constitution recognized Switzerland's linguistic diversity by establishing German, French, and Italian as official languages. This provision ensured that the new unified state would respect and preserve the cultural heritage of all its constituent communities. The 1848 Constitution successfully transformed Switzerland from a loose confederation into a unified nation-state. It created a single national identity while preserving local traditions, integrated the economy through free trade between cantons, and established a standardized legal framework that laid the foundation for modern Swiss democracy. This constitutional framework proved so successful that it remains the foundation of Swiss governance today, demonstrating the enduring wisdom of balancing federal unity with cantonal autonomy in creating a stable and prosperous democracy. The Swiss Confederation underwent a remarkable transformation from its medieval origins as a loose alliance of independent states to become a sophisticated federal system that balances central authority with cantonal sovereignty. In 1291, Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden formed a simple mutual defense pact. Each canton remained fully independent, connected only by loose agreements for specific purposes like defense and trade. By 1848, this loose alliance had evolved into a true federal state. The federal constitution established a central government with specific powers while preserving significant autonomy for the individual cantons. This federal system creates a delicate balance. The cantons retain sovereignty in many areas, but this sovereignty is limited where the federal constitution grants authority to the central government. Think of Swiss federalism as a carefully balanced scale. On one side, we have cantonal sovereignty, the canton's authority over education, healthcare, police, and local taxation. On the other side, we have federal authority, the central government's responsibility for defense, foreign policy, currency, and customs. The federal constitution determines which powers belong to which level. This federal structure evolved through centuries of political development. Historical maps show how the Confederation grew from 3 founding cantons to the complex federal system we see today. Today's Switzerland operates on 3 distinct political levels: the federal government, 26 cantons, and over 2,700 communes. Each level has its own sphere of authority, creating a sophisticated system of shared governance. This balance between central authority and cantonal sovereignty has become the cornerstone of Swiss governance. It allows for national unity while preserving local autonomy, creating a system that has proven remarkably stable and effective for over 170 years. Swiss neutrality emerged as a cornerstone of the nation's foreign policy, fundamentally shaping its role in European and world affairs. This principle of non-alignment would prove crucial to Switzerland's survival and prosperity. The concept of neutrality in Swiss foreign policy developed gradually from the Confederation's early experiences with European power struggles. By the late medieval period, Swiss leaders recognized that their mountainous nation could best survive by avoiding entanglement in the conflicts of larger powers. The Congress of Vienna in 1815 marked a pivotal moment for Swiss neutrality. European powers, exhausted by the Napoleonic Wars, formally recognized Switzerland's perpetual neutrality as beneficial to continental stability. The formal declaration established Switzerland as a permanently neutral state, guaranteed by the major European powers. This recognition meant that Switzerland would not participate in wars between other nations, and in return, other powers would respect Swiss territorial integrity. Let's examine Switzerland's strategic position in Europe, which made neutrality both practical and necessary. Surrounded by major powers, Switzerland's location at the heart of Europe required careful diplomatic navigation. The benefits of neutrality became evident during major European conflicts. While neighboring nations were devastated by wars, Switzerland remained a haven of peace and stability, allowing it to develop economically and serve as a diplomatic meeting ground. Swiss neutrality was tested during both world wars. Despite enormous pressure and the chaos surrounding them, Switzerland maintained its neutral stance, providing humanitarian aid while avoiding military involvement in the conflicts. Today, Swiss neutrality continues to define the nation's international role. Switzerland hosts numerous international organizations, serves as a mediator in global conflicts, and maintains its commitment to peaceful coexistence while remaining outside military alliances. Switzerland's direct democracy system represents one of the most sophisticated forms of citizen participation in government, allowing the Swiss people to directly shape their nation's laws and policies. Swiss direct democracy operates through three primary mechanisms: referendums, where citizens can challenge laws passed by parliament; initiatives, where citizens can propose constitutional amendments; and popular votes on major policy decisions. The process begins when citizens collect 100,000 signatures to propose a constitutional amendment. Parliament then reviews the proposal and may offer a counterproposal. Finally, the entire nation votes, requiring both a majority of citizens and a majority of cantons to pass. Swiss citizens participate in democracy more frequently than any other nation, voting approximately 4 times per year on national issues, plus additional cantonal and municipal votes. This creates an exceptionally engaged and informed citizenry. Swiss direct democracy evolved gradually from the 1848 federal constitution. The optional referendum was introduced in 1874, allowing citizens to challenge laws. The popular initiative followed in 1891, enabling constitutional amendments. Women gained voting rights in 1971, completing the democratic system. This system has resulted in over 600 national votes since 1848, creating a unique form of governance where citizens retain ultimate sovereignty over their government's decisions, ensuring accountability and legitimacy through direct participation. Swiss direct democracy represents the ultimate check on government power, ensuring that the people remain sovereign and that political decisions reflect the genuine will of the citizenry, rather than the preferences of political elites. From a humble alliance of 3 mountain communities in 1291 to one of the world's most stable democracies, the Swiss Confederation's journey spans over 7 centuries of remarkable political evolution. Today's Switzerland stands as a testament to the power of federalism and consensus building. 26 cantons unite under a federal system that balances local autonomy with national unity. The Swiss model demonstrates 4 enduring principles that continue to define the nation. Federalism ensures that local communities retain significant autonomy while participating in national governance. Switzerland's commitment to neutrality has allowed it to serve as a mediator in international conflicts and host numerous international organizations, from the Red Cross to the United Nations offices. Direct democracy empowers Swiss citizens to vote on constitutional amendments and major policy decisions, making Switzerland one of the world's most participatory democracies. The tradition of consensus politics, rooted in centuries of intercantonal cooperation, continues to shape Swiss governance through coalition governments and collaborative decision-making. In the 21st century, Switzerland faces new challenges while maintaining its core values. Immigration, European integration, and global economic pressures test the resilience of Swiss institutions. Yet the Swiss Confederation's greatest legacy lies not in its institutions alone, but in proving that diverse communities can unite while preserving their distinct identities. This balance of unity and diversity offers valuable lessons for democratic societies worldwide. From the mountain valleys of Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden to the global stage of international diplomacy, Switzerland's journey demonstrates the enduring power of cooperation, compromise, and democratic ideals. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Swiss history.